Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final game of the day here at the 2019 16U Girls Invitational Championships for Baseball Canada. My name is Michael Petter, and I am so thrilled to have a guest joining me for this broadcast. Thrilled does not even begin to describe it, how exciting it is to have with us here Nicole Luchansky. Nicole, thank you so much for joining me here on this broadcast.
No problem. Glad to be here.
So Nicole is here as a veteran of 5 World Cups representing Canada at the world stage, and now acting in a scout capacity to see the next wave of players who will be joining Canada at that global stage. And I guess, Nicole, the first question I got to ask you is, we're into the end of the second day. How have you been enjoying the games you've seen so far?
This is really enjoyable baseball. It's been about 15 years since I played in this tournament as a U16, and it's gone up from there. Like there's really good pitching, defense, everything is great, and it's been a great tournament.
And for this game here, we've got 2 very good teams, both coming in with records of 1-1. Quebec 1-1, Alberta 1-1. In fact, all 4 teams in Pool A with records of 1-1, all playing their last round robin game right now. Any one of these 4 teams could finish first. Any one of these 4 teams could finish fourth and be playing in the 7-12 placement games. So much on the line through these next 2 games. We've got Alberta, a province that both you and I are very familiar with, and Quebec. And so let's really quickly run through the starting lineup for Alberta. It's going to be Sydney Smith leading off, playing left field. Batting second is the second baseman, Haley Sador. Batting third, the extra hitter in this game, Sydney Moore. Batting fourth, the shortstop, Brinley Rice. 5, 6, and 7, the middle of the order, is the catcher, Tyra Stanich, the third baseman, Maddie Courtley, and the first baseman, Zelaya Downs. And I want to again apologize to Zelaya for getting her name wrong a few times in the game this morning. And then the 8, 9, and 10 batters for Alberta, it'll be Andy Suhai is the pitcher, center fielder Shelby Fulton, and right fielder Ava Weeks. Taking a look at the defensive setup for Team Quebec, it's going to be the outfield from left to right, Naomi Bolduc-So in left, Telly Kuri in center, and Charlotte Elie in right. The infield from third to first, Noémie Letendre, Lauriane Carrière, the second baseman, Lidia Lafave, and first base, Junie Labrie. Behind the plate for this one will be Rosalie Dufresne, and on the mound for Team Quebec, Delika Dumoulin. And if I'm mispronouncing any of those names, I do apologize. I have plenty of French-Canadian in my family heritage, but that does not mean that my French is very good. We'll do the best we can with what we've got. Dumoulin making her first appearance on the mound in this tournament. And we should mention the third team out there as well. That is, of course, our umpiring crew. It's going to be Jarrett Conrad behind the plate. Manning first base, it will be Liam Johnston. And over on the third base side, it will be, finding the first name here, Henneberry is the last name. And, of course, I've gone and messed up all my notes. There we go, Matt Henneberry over at over on the third base side. So here we go, ready to get this one rolling as the first pitch comes in. And a line shot through the middle out to center field. It's going to get all the way down to the fence. Smith rounding first, heading it, and it actually ends up rolling under the fence. So Smith with the lead-off ground rule double. Great start for Team Alberta.
That was laced. That was a hard hit ball.
And for Alberta, Smith, I didn't even get a chance to go through her stats so far in this tournament. She took the first pitch and laced it out to center field. And that'll bring up Haley Sador, and you and I both got to watch some of Sador's incredible pitching performance earlier this morning. Now she's going to come up. She's going to play second base in this game. Hasn't had quite as good of a tournament at the plate, but Sador putting so much there out on the mound. Sends that one out to left field, and it's caught immediately. We're not even getting hardly any chance for you to talk. So much happening on first pitches here. That'll bring up Sydney Moore. She's the extra hitter. Moore in this tournament so far, 1 for 4, a couple of walks as well. And Moore coming up with 1 on and 1 out here in the first. As we watch the right-hander Dumoulin get set. And here comes the first pitch. Taken for a called strike, and we're pretty early on in the going here, but I want to ask the delivery that you're seeing from Dumoulin. You're a scout. You tell us what you see in this delivery as she's thrown only a couple pitches so far.
Well, she came with a good off-speed pitch there, and it was really interesting to watch her play shortstop earlier in the tournament, and she's looking good so far. I mean, she has good velocity already.
When you're watching a player who plays 3, 4, sometimes 5 different positions, what are the different things that you're trying to see as you watch them at one position and then over to another?
That's the really interesting thing about this age division is they all play a second position. There's hardly any pitcher-only situations where in the women's game that's very, very common. It's way uncommon to find a pitcher that is a two-way player. So we really look for that athleticism that translates through all the positions. And try not to get too hung up on it if they're struggling at one of their 3 positions.
and like we've seen some players, I've had my book turn into Egyptian hieroglyphics trying to chart where they've been playing. I've had players go from second base to pitcher to third base to the outfield back into the infield again, all within the span of one game. And it really does challenge the mindset as you're trying to go from position to position.
I think it makes it fun, but it is a different game than, say, the women's level or, Major League Baseball because it's still youth. And they have pitch counts to worry about. They have a lot of things. So when they come up to the scorekeeper and they literally say 7 different players are moving around in the field when one thing happens.
Wait till you're in the broadcast position while all that's going on and you're trying to keep track. That one misses high and inside. And one thing that I've really liked from Moore, her approach at the plate, not as much in this at-bat because it's been a pretty quick at-bat so far, but Moore really is aggressive standing in there and is more than willing to take her hacks time in and time out. As she takes one there and sends it back into foul territory, which once again reminds us that if you're going to come down to Bedford for the games tomorrow or the next day, you park in that parking lot at your own risk. Baseball Canada, the teams are not responsible for any damage to any vehicles as a result of foul balls. There, the legal disclaimer has been covered.
There was a smash win for the
We did have one, yeah. I was calling that game when that happened, and it was involving Team Alberta actually this morning when that occurred. There's a walk to Moore, so that'll put runners at first and second with one away, bringing up Brinley Rice. Rice on the tournament so far 0 for 7, but that's another thing you got to watch is when a player is having a bit of a slump at the plate, how do they work themselves out of it? Obviously not quite the start that Rice would have wanted at 0 for 7 so far in this tournament, but you can tell that the skill set's there for her to break that open.
And from my perspective as well, like we aren't just looking at your stats. We're looking at the swings you put on the ball, what pitches you decide to offer at. We can see your approach, even if you don't get 7 out of 7 hits.
Yeah, because sometimes, and you'll see it. We saw a couple in this last game involving Saskatchewan and BC where they were hard hit balls, but right at a player. And you've all heard that term atom ball. And sometimes that's going to come back and bite a batter, and then the next time around they'll get one that they don't get great contact on, but it just falls in the right place. It all balances out.
I mean, this should be common knowledge, but here's a ground ball.
Over to third to get the lead runner, and that will be the only out they'll get on that play. So Rice reaches on the fielder's choice. Smith retired over at third. Moore advances to second, and that'll bring up Tyra Stanich, the catcher for Team Alberta. Stanich 2 for 4 so far in the tournament with a double and a triple. She's also reached by getting hit by a pitch once and has 1 run scored. Comes up with 2 on and 2 out. And speaking of catchers, of course, Stanich, the catcher for Alberta in this game, how a catcher calls a game and controls their staff, another thing you're watching real closely, I'm sure.
Yeah, and at this age, it's pretty rare to see a catcher really come out with that big leadership role and take charge really aggressively. So if we do see that, that's obviously something to note.
And there's a
well
hit ball out to right center. That's gonna drop in. Stanich will get into second. 1 run will come in and score. And Rice will stop at third, so Alberta out to the early lead here, 1-0. A big RBI double for Stanich. And that will bring up Maddie Quartley, the third baseman, 0 for 5 so far on the tournament.
So there's a great example. Like, if that ball had been right to the center fielder and caught, it doesn't change how I see that player as a scout. So I see that ball hit the way it is. It doesn't really matter if it's caught or not.
Exactly, because, over the course of a season or over the course of a tournament, enough of those balls are going to fall in that, you'll take the occasional out. There's one hit out to right field, and making the catch is Charlotte Elie. So that will do it for the top of the first. A couple of hits for Team Alberta. 1 run on 3 hits, no errors, and 2 runners left on base. We played half an inning, and Team Alberta has the lead over Team Quebec 1 by a score of 1-0. And with Quebec 1 coming up here in the bottom of the first, let's run you through their batting order. And again, if I mispronounce any of these names, I do apologize. Telly Coury will lead off, playing center field. Batting second, the second baseman, Lidia Lafave. Batting third, the catcher, Rosalie Dufresne. Batting fourth, playing left field, Naomi Bolduc-So. Batting fifth, the first baseman, Junie Labrie. Batting sixth, the third baseman, Noémie Letendre. Batting seventh, playing shortstop, Laurie-Anne Carrière. Batting eighth, the pitcher, Delika Dumoulin. Batting ninth, the extra hitter, Jenny Boutillier. And batting 10th, playing right field, Charlotte Elie. Taking a look at the Alberta defense, Sydney Smith starting the game out in left, Shelby Fulton in center, Ava Weeks in right. The infield around from third to first is Maddie Quartley, Brinley Rice. At second base, it's Haley Sidor, and first, Zelaya Downs. Behind the plate is Tyra Stanich, and on the mound, Andy Suhai. And Suhai just taking a quick look. I believe this is her first pitching appearance in this tournament. It is indeed. As big thanks to the people over in the score booth to keep us up to date on all of these tournament stats through Game Changer. And if you want to follow along, you can't get to somewhere where you can catch the broadcast. You can also catch all the stats on GameChangerGC.com. And if you want to join the conversation that we're having here in the broadcast booth, you can send me a tweet or get me a message on Facebook. My Twitter handle, Petter, Petterpc, as in Pictou County, _sports. On Facebook, it's Petter PC Sports without the underscore, or just search Petter Pictou Sports in either Facebook or Twitter, and you can send me a message, send me a tweet, and get in on the conversation that we're having here during the game. We'll try to keep track of it and keep things interactive as we go. As Telly Coury gets ready to step up for her first at-bat of the game, and the first batter to be faced by Suhai, the right-hander, delivers a first pitch just up and out of the zone. Now in this game we're seeing 2 right-handers starting things off, but we've seen some good left-handed pitching in this tournament as well. Of course, the left-handed pitching so rare to see, but we've had some really, really good ones as well. Yeah,
and the old adage is true, like a left-handed arm is valuable. So don't get me wrong, I do put LHP down in my little charts, and if you're throwing strikes, that's something to look for sure.
Obviously, right-handed arms also important, but those lefties,
but more numerous.
Exactly. A good battle there for Coury to foul that one off, getting a piece of that pitch. Little bit behind on that swing, but making decent contact to at least try and catch up to it.
Yeah, and that one was a little behind, but I've seen a lot of, there we go.
There's one sent the opposite way down the right field line for a single for Coury.
And I've seen a lot of balls hit the other way this tournament, and that's something that when I played 15 years ago, girls weren't doing. So the game has really evolved since then, like intentionally driving the ball the opposite field when it's on the outer half of the plate.
That'll bring up Lidia Lafave, and Lafave coming up for her first plate appearance in this game. And we can tell you that so far in the tournament, Lafave, just 3 plate appearances so far. She went 1 for 2 with a walk. And a left-handed batter up there, and just as left-handed pitching is important, so too are left-handed batters. There's one sent out to right field. Coming across to make the catch is Weeks for the first out of the inning. And that'll bring up Rosalie Dufresne, the catcher. And Dufresne's 3 for 7 so far on the tournament, 2 RBI, a run scored. She was also hit by a pitch once. And we're starting to get into that situation. Now I'm going to ask you to go back to your time as a player. You got the shadow of the light pole going across. You've got the shadow of the tree starting to come into the batter's box. How we hear it occasionally when we're watching about how the shadows play tricks on the batters and whatnot. From a player's perspective, how big of an influence is that really?
Yeah, it's the lighting. Like, it's not so much a shadow from a light pole that the ball crosses over, in my experience. It's just that kind of tricky time of day when the ball doesn't seem as bright white and it kind of blends into the background.
And is it more difficult being a batter in that situation, or is it just as difficult being a fielder if a ball's hit towards you?
I'd say batter, but with the sun setting, if it's a pop-up, it can be more difficult as a fielder.
And, of course, fortunately for this field, players won't be looking necessarily up towards the sun. Grounder down to third, throw across, and Downs not quite able to pick that one up out of the grass, or off of the dirt, I should say. That'll send Curie around to third, and Dufresne will reach. Difficult throw all the way across the diamond there from third base.
Yeah, I mean, so she just hesitated enough, and it was just enough to her right that she felt she couldn't go to second, which is fine. But yeah, that's a tough play from third.
That'll bring up Bolduc-So. She's 2 for 8 so far on the tournament, a single, a double, 2 RBI, and hit by a pitch once as well. Comes up here with runners on the corners and 1 out. And if past experience is any indication, that runner on first will not be there long. Fouled off. That throw, and this brings up the throw down to second, obviously probably not going to happen so that you keep that runner at third, but that throw to second at this level, it's such a long throw and such a short amount of time you got to get it there. I think I've seen one caught stealing at second base all weekend so far. It's such a tough throw.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think it would be because we're on 80-foot base paths here, but it's just that stage in how strong these girls are at this point.
There's a shot out to left field, and that's going to be over the fence for a 3-run home run. Naomi Bolduc-So, and Alberta's 1-0 lead has evaporated. A 3-run home run. Quebec 1 takes the 3-1 lead. Break down that swing.
Yeah, I mean, I saw her in a game earlier, and I had it noted, athletic build. She moves well. I'm excited to watch more, and here she's proved me right. I mean, super smooth swing. No doubt that was out of the park. That
one, yeah, we saw the left fielder for Alberta, Sydney Smith, took a couple of steps back, and I think she realized pretty much right away that one was going to be gone as well. So a 3-run home run for Naomi Bolduc-So gives Quebec the 3-1 lead. That'll bring up Junie Labrie. And Labrie so far 1 for 7 on the tournament, but that one hit that she has, a triple. She's driven in 3 runs, scored twice as she also reached base by way of a walk. And that first pitch misses low, ball 1. And as a pitcher, giving up a 3-run home run, I'm sure one of the things you're looking at is how does she respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking for kind of a business-like response. Like, take a minute, take a breath, regather yourself, and then just go back to work here. And it's easy to see when people let it get to them. And
Sue High gets a good one down low in the zone there, getting Labrie to chase, so the count goes to 1-1. Andy Sue High playing in this tournament for at least the second straight year. I remember watching her from last year. She may actually be in her third straight 16U event.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing, just to go back to that, is that this park's only 218 to the corners and 259 to center. So as a pitcher, like, you just can't let it really get to you that much. I mean, it's a great hit, but it's not like she just hit it 400 feet off you.
Exactly, yeah. This is definitely the smaller of the two fields that we're playing at here in Bedford. Grounder down to first. Downs able to get over for the second out. And you've been a veteran of Team Canada for a long time, so this part probably fairly obvious. This is not your first trip to Nova Scotia.
No, and they've all been for baseball tournaments.
So we have to give a quick shout out here. The grounds crew here at these two fields have been keeping these fields in such great condition here all weekend long.
Oh, yeah, I saw the tractor going around on the field, and they were really worried about the rain. And then now they've actually had to wet the fields down a little bit, and they're just constantly on it.
And that is Noémie Letendre up at the plate now. Letendre 1 for 6 so far with a double, an RBI, a run scored. She's also reached base by way of the walk once so far. Comes up here with nobody on base, 2 away here in the bottom of the first inning. That pitch misses outside. And couldn't ask for much better weather for this game either, I tell you. It's been a little hot, a little muggy, but we're getting into the evening and beautiful, beautiful conditions to play the game.
Yeah, there's kind of an energy that comes over the park because it's been like a long afternoon, it's hot, and then we get to these evening games, which are usually really good matchups, and it kind of cools off, and everyone's ready to go again.
Grounder to short, gathered up, and a good strong throw across for the third out. But Quebec responds with 3 runs on 3 hits. There were no errors and nobody left on base. We've played 1 complete inning. Quebec won, leading Alberta by a score of 3-1. And we should very quickly take a look in the other game. They're into the bottom of the first over there as well. Ontario, Nova Scotia, still no score between Ontario and Nova Scotia 1. And the reason we're doing a bit of scoreboard watching, all 4 of these teams are in Pool A. All 4 of these teams have records of 1-1. We know this much. The 2 teams that win will finish first and second in Pool A and will get byes directly to the semifinals. The 2 teams that lose, one of them will advance to the quarterfinals. The other one will advance to the lower bracket, I guess you can call it, and will be playing in games that will head towards the placement of 7th through 12th. So it'll depend on which 2 teams win, who won their head-to-head matchup, which 2 teams lose, who won their head-to-head matchup, how this all plays out. So there's way too many scenarios to try to get into it here. And this just makes it fun. You know, if you win, you're right through to the semis. Can't ask for much more incentive than that.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting tournament with everyone, especially in this pool, being so close. It's not one of those, Ontario and Quebec have the most population, so they're automatically going to make it through to the gold medal game.
One thing I got to say, being a resident of Nova Scotia for the last few years, grew up in Alberta, but I'm a Nova Scotia boy now. We punch above our weight class.
Oh, yeah, this program has excelled for a long. There's the Lidia Downs up to the plate now, but yeah, it wasn't competitive for a long time, and now it's right there.
And Nova Scotia pretty strong with female athletics, not only in baseball, but you look at what Nova Scotia has contributed to hockey. A couple of Nova Scotia players on the Olympic team last time around, and we're pretty proud of our female athletes through and through. There's a strike to Downs.
Yeah. There's some volunteers or some committed people behind the scenes stirring things up, and it's really proving to be a point across all the sports.
Downs with a home run over the fence right over by the Rawlings sign here on this field this morning. Absolutely tanked that one out there, and that one may have gone out even over the 268 sign on the other field. Certainly not a 400-foot blast, but it definitely went some distance, that 2-run home run she had this morning in the game against Ontario. There's a line shot, but right at the third baseman. Letendre, good footwork there to make sure she had herself right behind that ball as it was coming towards her for the first out of the inning.
That's a great play by Letendre, but that's an example of a hit that I'm looking at. Like, I don't really care that was caught. That's a well-struck ball.
How much, as when you're scouting, are you looking at offense versus defense? What are you putting more priority on?
Oh, that's a tough question.
As for the first time, we finally get a foul ball to hit the top of our broadcast tent here. Knew it had to happen eventually.
Yeah, I paused because I was scared of the ball. But yeah, you know, our national team has always said that we pride ourselves on defense. And if you look at the World Cup, the teams that consistently are in the top, let's just say Japan, um, they have great defense. They don't make mistakes. They make the odd mistake, and everyone's like, wow, I've never seen that before. So, you know, we need to hit, and we traditionally do hit. So when you see those smooth infielders and those really good outfielders and great pitching, we really take note of that.
1-1 now the count on Suhai. Andy Suhai, the pitcher for Alberta in this game, getting her first chance at bat in this one. And Suhai so far on the tournament, you look at her numbers, she's 2 for 5 with a couple of singles. As the sun beating right in on our backs now.
Yeah, it's that like 7 o'clock sun that's still hot somehow.
That one fouled back.
And there's a conspicuous hole in the parking lot now where that windshield is smashed. There's no cars parked there anymore.
Yeah, and if my wife is watching, I'm still parked way, way back. I haven't moved the vehicle. It's still safe.
I mean, it's funny. It's like very close to the backstop, so people were attempting it.
There's a grounder down to short, a little bit of a bobble, but picked up and thrown across, not quite in time, as Suhai never gave up on that play. She hustled even though it looked like it was a routine grounder.
So important. I mean, you're here to give it 100%, right? You're not running 5K. You're just running 80 feet, so do it as hard as you can, and it will pay off. And that who knows what this base runner might mean.
And a quick throw over to first, and Suhai able to get back. Shelby Fulton due up to bat now as she stands in.
You can see the players now using their hand to extend their brim, blocking from the sun. So who knows what we might see here with the pop-up.
And there's another throw over to first. And that right-handed pitcher, the move to first, that's one of those things that a good move from a righty, so hard to see. What do you see in that move that you just saw to first?
She's quick and she, you know, the lean. She doesn't have any lean. She doesn't have any giveaway. She makes a decision and goes for it, but it doesn't tip it.
Suhai with a bit of a lead there at first. Good secondary lead as that pitch in for a strike to Fulton. Fulton so far on the tournament 0 for 3. 1 run as she did reach base by way of the walk one time.
One thing I would say in this tournament that separates the better moves from the normal moves is mixing it up, mix up their looks. Like, they're not quite at the age yet where they've really nailed down the whole vary your look. Sometimes you can just tell instantly if they're going to pitch or pick.
One thing I'm noticing is not as much of a slide step there in the delivery to the plate to try and cut down that time on the throw yet. But again, that's one of those things that as a young pitcher, there's still so much time to learn that aspect of the delivery.
Agreed. Like some of these girls at 14, I wouldn't really expect it yet. They are still focusing on just throwing strikes.
And speaking of strikes, there's a called third strike. First K of the game from Dumoulin, and that'll bring up Ava Weeks for her first at-bat of this game. Just her third plate appearance in the tournament so far. She's 1 for 1 with a single. The other plate appearance led to a walk. Came around to score one of those 2 times. And Weeks comes up here with 1 on and 2 away. Offered at the pitch, but then it ended up hitting her in the leg, so it ends up being a strike as a result of offering at that pitch. The left-handed bat of Weeks, the right fielder for Team Alberta. As we get ready for the 0-1 pitch. Swung on and missed. Good cut there from Weeks, but not that far off target.
I was just going to say, that's something that I'm noticing is a good swing. So she missed, but I mean, we all miss sometimes. So you can still tell players swing.
And that one just misses on the outside corner. Count goes to 1-2. At least I think it was the outside corner from our broadcast position here. Sometimes it's hard to tell exactly where those pitches are missing, but it looked from here like it was pretty close.
Yeah, we're down the first base line, which is kind of cool in its own way, but sometimes it's hard to tell.
There's a grounder over to short. Flip to second for the third out of the inning as Carriere, who made the error earlier in the inning atones for it by getting the assist on the third out. No runs, no hits, one error, and one runner left on base. We've played 1.5, and Team Quebec 1 continues to lead Team Alberta by a score of 3-1, due up for Quebec 1. In the bottom of the second, it will be Carrière, Dumoulin, and Boutillier. And if anybody gets on, then Elie. And we were talking earlier, both of us from Alberta. You still make Alberta your home. I haven't been able to call Alberta home in a long time. So for both of us, watching the black with the blue and white, a little bit more special in that it is kind of, in a way, both our home teams.
Yeah, I mean, I get the feels watching this team. And of course, I am impartially watching all teams, and all the players make me excited to watch. But having actually played for Alberta, it's different than just cheering for the Oilers. I never played for the Oilers.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I love doing play-by-play here in Nova Scotia, but if the Oilers called, I'd answer the phone for sure.
Are you listening?
Yeah. If anybody from head office over there on Kingsway Avenue, if their head office is still where it used to be, if anyone on Kingsway Avenue is listening, give me a call.
The Oilers Sports and Entertainment Group.
There we go. Yeah. Of course, the brand new building out there, I haven't had a chance to see it yet, let alone go into it. Cause
Ice District. It's good.
Is it?
It's gorgeous,
right.
Yeah.
Good to know. Of course, I spent a lot more time in the rinks in, St. Albert and Sherwood Park and all those ones.
Yeah, but this is a beautiful province. I'm really happy to be here. I wish I could spend more time and tour around.
Oh, it is a great place to live, and my wife grew up out here, which is how I ended up moving here, and I absolutely love being able to call myself a Nova Scotian now. I'm still a bit of a come from away, as the expression goes, but
I've heard that way.
More and more, I'm considered a homer here. So Lauriane Carrière, the shortstop for Quebec, standing in to lead off inning number 2.
You got to start calling it a tournament, not a tournament. They all say tournament.
Tournament, yeah. Carrière so far 2 for 6 with 2 runs scored. She also reached base by way of the walk one time so far here in this tournament. There's a swing and a miss. Yeah, the Western Canadian accent will never completely go away. Such is the way it goes. As the shadows continue to lengthen, Suhai, a little bit deliberate, taking her time, delivers a strike right on the outside corner, and the count goes to 0-2. One of the things that I've noticed so far in this tournament, how many of the pitchers are so quick. They get that ball back, and it's like it's getting ingrained in them. You get the ball, you get on the mound, you throw again.
Yeah, I have noticed that too. There's the ball to third, Courtley, just not in time. Downs gets it out of the dirt, but not in time.
Yeah, good hustle there by Carrière on that one. The throw just a little bit into the dirt, but we did see a good pick out there by Downs, but again, just not quite quick enough with the throw. So that'll bring up Dumoulin. Dumoulin 2 for 5 so far in the tournament, a pair of singles. She's also reached by way of the walk once, come around to score twice so far.
But yeah, these pitchers, they do work quick, and you can tell some of it is nervousness and not feeling confident to take their time. But there's a pick. We do preach, work fast. So the longer that your defense has to stand behind you, the flatter they are. So the more you can just keep the pressure on the batter, so they are absorbing that.
You hear talk about the going to the pitch clock, and I know that at some levels, including the WBSC, they use the pitch clock in some tournaments, I do believe. I don't want to see that completely regulated, but at the same time, I'm tired of watching Boston and New York go 5 hours and not even play a full 9 innings.
Yeah, I know, and baseball is so traditional, and it's hard to put any rule changes in, but it's the WBSC that always puts them in first. They're on the cutting edge of anything that's coming in. They have the extra innings rule with runners on first and second. So it's kind of a cool way to see how it'll work out.
And the big thing about that extra innings rule that I like is you're not going to see as many 19, 20, 21 inning games where you've got guys who have no business being on the mound, being out there because there's just no arms left.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun in the major leagues to see your favorite position player do it. But at the World Cup, we only have 20-person roster. We don't have a 40-man roster, and we're trying to play a tournament, and we're trying to save arms, so we don't want to play 19 innings.
There's a strike, and you've seen that that rule really does help eliminate those extra inning games, or at least minimize how many extra innings you have to go. And the pitch clock, certainly we've seen it improve the pace of play, but it gives enough room that a pitcher does have leeway if they need to take a moment to settle themselves after a particular pitch or whatnot, that it doesn't impinge on the integrity of the game, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it depends what kind of pitcher you are. If you're a really slow to the plate pitcher, then I guess you would have to really adjust. But for probably 75% of pitchers, they wouldn't even notice.
As we've got the runner on first here, nobody out. Dumoulin at the plate as the two respective pitchers are battling here. That one misses outside.
Yeah, this is something I've seen a lot, a pitcher hitting for themselves. It's kind of fun. Like, it's not really realistic of what you'd see on the national team, but it's fun to see these athletic pitchers going both ways.
And the use of the extra hitter to give the opportunity for more players to get more at-bats, that 10-person batting order, not every team is using it, but those that are using it effectively. There's another throw and a nice pick by Downs.
Downs really went for it there. Oh, the pitcher missed the ball because she couldn't see it in the sun.
Yeah.
We already had that discussion. But, yeah, Downs has been a little bit tentative at first, I've noticed, just trying to make picks and catches with both hands, which really reduces your stretch length. So I'm happy to see her really go for it there with just the glove. And
Downs, one of those players who I distinctly remember her from this tournament last year. And, we talked about the home run that she had earlier, and Downs, one of those she is 16, so a somewhat veteran presence on this Alberta lineup. That brings up Jenny Boutillier, the extra hitter, as the expression goes, for the 10-person batting order, and Boutillier takes the first pitch strike. So far on the tournament, Boutillier 1 for 2 with a single, an RBI, and a run scored in just those 2 plate appearances. There's a well-hit ball over the head of the left fielder all the way into the fence. Hustling back to get at it there is Smith. But Boutillier will get in with a stand-up double, driving in the 4th run of the game for Quebec. It's now 4-1.
That's what I'm talking about. She drove that the other way, like on purpose. You could see her wait the timing and then drive it. It's not an accident, and that's something that's really impressed me this tournament with these girls.
We're seeing so many players who are so mechanically sound. The fundamentals of the game are there. A good, solid swing, throwing the ball well, all kinds of things. And it's great to see that the female game has developed so well here in this country, that these young players do have such good fundamentals.
Yeah, and kudos to those people who put in the time. The coaching staffs of some of these teams are, they've coached midget AAA. They've coached at the women's national team level, actually one of them. And it's great to see those people giving back, and here's the product. And even the people who build these programs that aren't on the field coaching, but they build the teams, the tryouts and everything, it's paying off.
That brings up Charlotte Elie. Elie, the right fielder for Quebec, takes a cut at the first pitch there, swings and misses, and the count goes to 0-1. Elie so far on the tournament 1 for 5, with a single, 2 RBI, 2 runs scored. She also reached base by way of the walk, and once on a fielder's choice as well. And that one catches her right in the small of the back. And even though I haven't played baseball at anywhere near this level, I do remember from my very minor league ball how unpleasant that feeling is.
Yeah, it's funny. In where she got it, it would, and especially if it's in a spine at all. But one other thing I've taken note of, the players who will take that pitch, it is important. You know, it's huge to get on base, and you put pressure by getting on base. And like the thing about girls and even women's baseball is you're never going to get hit with a pitch that's more than 60, 70 miles an hour, and even at the women's level, low 80s is where it tops out right now. So. Um, Maybe this is just personal opinion, but I don't mind it when people take pitches. I think if you have to jump all the way, if it's close and you just kind of hop whatever, but if you're jumping out of the way and you could have been on base, I don't know if that's the right choice.
It's a little bit different than, the high heat that you see in the majors, 98, 99, sometimes into the triple digits.
Yeah, of course, I don't want to see anyone getting hit in the elbow. I don't want to see people getting hit in the joints. And some of them are wearing guards. It's fine. But, yeah, it's not a 99-mile-an-hour fastball to your ribs. So I've been hit by a lot of female pitching, and I'm still here.
Yeah. And, you look at, as we're going to see a pitching change for Alberta, Sydney Moore, who was the extra hitter, now moves to the pitcher's mound, and I believe Suhai just comes out to become the extra hitter. And for Moore, this is not her first pitching appearance in this tournament, so we can run down her stats. She's pitched 1/3 of an inning in just the one game that she appeared in, and that 1/3 of an inning came earlier today. And this brings us to talking about pitch counts. Haley Sador, 6 2/3 innings, 15 strikeouts, gave up just 2 hits over that 6 2/3 innings, but couldn't finish the game because of the pitch count rule.
Yeah.
How much of a heartbreak was it to watch Sydney Moore, have to come in and finish that game for her?
Heartbreaking, and well done. She could finish it off in one batter. It was a great job, but it's part of the game. Pitch counts are important. They have been proven to work with our young arm health, which is great, but it doesn't stop the baseball heart in you. And you see a pitcher have a no-hitter through 4, but they've hit their 65 and they got to be saved. So you take them out.
As there's a ball out to right center. That'll get all the way down to the fence. Coming in to second is Coury. And coming all the way around to score, Boutillier. Elie stops at third. So an RBI double for Coury. She's now 2 for 2 on the game. And Quebec leading it 5-1. And for Coury, that's 2 very well hit balls for her already today.
Yeah, again with the oppo power. That was really not catchable. That was a great hit.
Yeah, there's no way any coach is going to line their defense up to get that one in the gap. No way, no how.
Our who do we have in right again?
In right field right now it is Weeks.
Weeks could have cut that off. So just with a little more practice, just like a little bit more familiarity, she could cut that off, and maybe that runner doesn't get to third. But yeah, she wasn't catching that in the air.
Lafave up now. She's 0 for 1, flying out to right field her first time up. First pitch to her misses low, ball 1. And again, a reminder, if you want to join the conversation, if you have a question for Nicole, send it to me through Facebook, Petter Pictou Sports, or send me a tweet also through Petter Pictou Sports. That one popped up out to right field. The catch made, and that will drive in a run. Heading down to third and getting in safely is Coury. And in this day of analytics, one of the most common heard phrases is the productive out. And we saw that there from Lafave with the sac fly.
Yeah, and the sac fly is very difficult at this level for an outfielder to cut down. I actually haven't seen anyone throw someone out from the outfield. So if you can get it deep enough that the outfielder is feeling it, back in their normal position, it's pretty much a run.
And that makes it now 6-1 in favor of Quebec. And I should have warned you, the other thing about this broadcast position being this close to the barbecue, you'll get the smell, you'll get distracted.
I ate a hot dog before I came up here, so I wouldn't be distracted.
I had a cheeseburger, but that certainly hasn't stopped me. Dufresne back up to the plate here for her second plate appearance. She had a single, came around to score back in the first. Although I certainly don't have the athlete's diet going either, so.
Well, I'm also retired, so I don't need it. I don't need the athlete's diet.
The things that you can get away with talking about during a baseball broadcast.
Yeah.
Gotta love it.
The beauty of it.
There we go, swing and a miss. As we see Moore again out for her second appearance in the day. And when you're playing 2 games in one day like this, I mean, everybody's seen the doubleheaders. When the one game was early in the morning, the 9:30 start, and now playing in the 6:30 game, and there's that big pause in between, does the effect of having pitched in the morning, even only 1/3 of an inning, really have any impact at all on the pitching appearance later in the day?
I would say with that little of an appearance, probably not. I wasn't a pitcher, so I can't speak from experience. But, I mean, she would have gone in for that 1/3 and done her whole bullpen warm-up, right? So it's not. That's why the pitch count is in place. It doesn't. She didn't just throw 3 pitches. It's the pitches in between innings. It's the warm-up and everything. So, I mean, it is tough to pitch twice in one day.
And Moore doing that here in this one. That one misses just a bit outside. And the count now. Sometimes I lose track of the count. I'm so busy chatting. But those of you watching at home, you're following along. You know what's going on. 6-1 the scoreline, though. We do know that much. There's a hard hit ball out to center field. Nicely cut off there by the center fielder, Fulton. But it does drive in another run, making it 7-1. But maybe more importantly, Fulton holding that to a single. If that ball gets by her, it's a double at least.
Yeah, that's a huge thing as an outfielder, knowing the situation. So that run's obviously scoring no matter what. So you just get in front of it, get that blocked up, and she's not going anywhere. She's not going to second. But if you try to field that on the run, there's too much risk there. There's no reward.
That'll bring up Bolduc So. She hit the 3-run home run over the left field fence back in the first inning. And after the first pitch misses just a little bit outside, Stanich threatens to throw down to first, but does not end up delivering that ball to Downs. That one fouled off. And it lands just in the empty parking space between a couple of vehicles there. We've been having way too much fun watching the foul balls into the parking lot here.
It doesn't matter what age you are. You got to watch. It's so entrancing. And when I'm sorry to whoever's car that was, but it was fun to watch.
There's another one into the parking lot. And rolls through into another empty parking space. So 2 strikes now on Bolduc So. 1-2 the count after those 2 pitches fouled off. And in this game of the pitch count, to be able to foul off some pitches and force that opposing pitcher to maybe waste 1 or 2 or 3 extra pitches becomes so much more important because you get into that next pitcher that much quicker and maybe a chance to have a more successful at-bat later in the game.
Absolutely, yeah. If you can get their starting pitcher out early, that's a huge advantage. And I mean, you're not really thinking this way as a player, but if you can force them to keep them into that next pitch count level, so instead of resting 1 day, they have to rest 2 days. Let's say that the coach decides they really want to keep them in, and now they have to do the 2-day rest. That changes their whole strategy for the tournament. So any extra pitches you can get them to throw are an advantage.
So we have finished the bottom of the second inning. Quebec does get 4 runs in that inning on 4 hits. No errors, 1 runner left on base. We played 2 complete, and the score after 2 is Quebec 1-7 and Alberta 1. And as we take a quick look at what's going on in that other game, they're into the top of the second there. Ontario leading that one 3-1. So if those 2 scores hold, and it's very early in both games, so still a lot can happen, Quebec 1 and Ontario would get the byes into the semifinals. Alberta and Nova Scotia both at 1-2, and Nova Scotia won that head-to-head game with Alberta, which means Nova Scotia would make it to the quarterfinals. Alberta would drop down into that 7-12 bracket, and but like I say, still a lot left to be played in both of these games. Plenty could still turn around. We've seen, but over the course of these last 2 days, we've seen multiple double-digit innings. Yes, most of them have been in the C division, the C pool, but that doesn't mean you can't see something crazy like that happen here either.
No, and I mean, look how well Quebec's hitting. Like, you can't count anyone out of a big inning, and I know Alberta can hit too.
And leading off, it will be Sydney Smith. Smith hit the leadoff double to start this game off, and comes back up for her second plate appearance. And first pitch to Smith misses high, ball one. As the lights here at Joan Lenahan Field have been turned on. That pitch misses just low, ball 2-0, or 1-1. And patience at the plate. A big thing that normally comes with more experience and a more veteran presence, but we're seeing a lot of it in these young hitters as well.
Yeah, that's something that I can definitely notice. It's very important not to swing at pitches out of the strike zone, and especially in this situation when you're down by 6, and you can't waste any swings, you can't waste any outs. Your outs need to be productive outs or hard hits, or so it's really good to see her. So she takes that 3-0, but that's a good decision here. Like, you gotta try to work the count a little bit here, extended inning. The worst thing that Alberta could do right now is have a quick inning with like 5 pitches.
As it would just give Quebec so much opportunity to just keep rolling that momentum. There's another pitch taken, and the count goes to 3-2. I'm not anyone who has played at anywhere near the level you have, so take this with the boulder of salt that goes with. As Smith is able to draw herself the walk to start off the inning, that'll bring up Haley Sador. But I have never been one of those who has bought into the idea that a 3-0 pitch absolutely must be taken. I've always felt you pick one location. If that pitch is coming in that exact location, go for it because you're going to drive the heck out of the ball. If it's anywhere else, even if it's in the zone, yes, you take it so that your at-bat can be extended. But if it's in that one location, why not swing at it just because it's 3-0?
I totally agree with you. I think we tell kids that it's an automatic take when they're too young to determine what their pitch is and or determine if the pitch is going to be there or not. And then there's this age where they get good enough to do what you just said. And I think it's been drilled so hard into them that they're just going to be punished if they swing at it, that, you know, they just can't make the adjustment at whatever age. You know, this would be an age where I would say it's time to start doing that for sure. And it seems to be a hard adjustment because it's this thing where when you're 10 and you pop up on a 3-0 pitch, it's just cardinal sin.
Mm-hmm. And I get that. It's
and then it never really gets stamped out, even though, yeah, for sure, you know, at this level, for sure at the next level, guaranteed. If you're looking inside and it's inside fastball, great. But don't look in, like you said, don't look inside and then see a strike on the outer half and then roll over on it. That's fun, you know. But I agree with you. I think it's a waste. If the great pitch is coming in 3-0, for sure, go after it.
Here, all the people that I've argued with over the years, you just heard it. I'm kind of right.
I mean, I'm not a coach expert either, but we're kind of right. You have to admit. Oh,
Alberta nearly running into some trouble there, but able to make the adjustment and get back to first base is Sador with that hard hit ball, and Smith making the decision to stop at second, forcing Sador back into what ends up being just a long single.
Very long single.
And that'll bring up Moore. She walked and scored her first time up, the only run for Alberta so far. Another one of those well-hit balls, and Sador gets a single out of it at least, but could have been a double.
Yeah, I think she would have been safe, but at least they're both safe. Nothing bad happened to them.
That pitch misses just a little bit high. And one thing that I'm noticing here from Dumoulin as a pitcher, when she's missing, she's not missing by much. She's very close to hitting those corners, hitting her spots. to get the outcome that she's looking for on the mound.
And that's great. I mean, as a pitcher, you're not always trying to throw a strike. Sometimes you're trying to throw a ball, but if it's a foot off the plate, it's never going to be effective. So it needs to be those 2 inches off the plate to try to get people to bite.
And Dumoulin has been close to the plate with those pitches that have been out of the zone. And you talk about leadership from a catcher. We see that there as the catcher noticing something on those pitches that just missing, comes out and gives her pitcher a chance to take a breath, calm down, and reset herself there.
Absolutely. And, I mean, you have unlimited catcher-to-pitcher meetings. So, coaches, here's a pop-up in the infield.
Infield fly rule, and I believe the umpire called the infield fly, did he not? And
I definitely heard someone calling infield fly, but it might not have been the ump.
And the umpire was pointing up in the air. And now he's...
Usually pointing up by the umpire is the universal sign for...
and then the player who was going to make the catch of the ball ended up running into the ump.
Yeah.
And now we're going to get a bit of a conference to make sure that the umpires get things right. And that's one thing we've seen from these umpires is if they're not sure on a call, it has been great to see a few times already this weekend where the umpires will get together, talk things over, and make sure they get it right. And, these are umpires who are umping a national tournament, absolutely, and they've got a lot of experience, but they're also still early in their careers, a lot of them, that this is a great learning experience for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And other than what you just mentioned, I haven't noticed them that much, which is a great sign of a great umpiring crew.
Yeah. And so the infield fly does take effect, so the out there. And throw down to first, just a hair off target. 2 runs will come in to score on the play as Brinley Rice reaches on the throwing error, and 2 runs come in to score. She'll get 1 RBI on the play, as Smith's run would have scored regardless. Sidor comes in as well. It's now 7-3. And that'll bring up Tyra Stanich. She has the RBI double, driving in the run back in the first inning, and comes up here with 1 on and 1 out here in the third, as Alberta's aggressive base running paying advantages here in the third inning.
Yeah, I mean, Alberta will take whatever it can get right now. It's just got a couple greasy runs, but they don't care.
Grounder to short, flip to second for 1, over to first, not in time. And I don't think even the best middle infielders would have been able to turn 2 on that one.
That ball was too high of a bounce. It was a ground ball, but it wasn't hit sharp enough, especially with these, I know that it's a shorter turn, but it's also only 80 feet for the batter to run. I mean, they did everything pretty cleanly there, and it wasn't close.
So Stanich will reach on the fielder's choice, 2 away. That'll bring up Maddie Quartley. Throw over to first, and Stanich gets in. As we see Quartley 0 for 1 so far with that hard hit ball out to right field that ended up being caught. This time Stanich is running and Quartley fouls that one back. The count goes to 0-1. And just, it's the old expression, you have a round bat and a round ball and you're trying to hit it square. Just a little bit off the mark on that cut there by Quartley.
Yeah.
Another throw over to first.
Really good move there. And, sometimes the objective isn't necessarily to throw her out. So it's just to keep her close and to let her know that you have a good move. So don't get too far off.
Here comes a pitch. Runner going. Throw down to second. Wow. What a gun! And there we talked about it earlier, how rare it is for a player to be caught stealing out at second, but we saw it there. What a gun from Rosalie Dufresne behind the plate to get Stanich caught stealing at second to end the inning. Alberta does put 2 on the board. They score 2 runs on 2 hits, or 2 runs on 1 hit, excuse me. There was 1 error and 1 runner left on base. We've played 2.5. Quebec now leads it 7-3, due up 4. Quebec 1 in the bottom of the third. It'll be Labrie, Letendre, and Carrière. And let's go back to that great throw by Dufresne.
Yeah, that was bang, bang. She did everything perfectly. Her pop was really smooth, and that's what we were just talking about with holding the runner, too. So if Duolong doesn't show that good move, maybe an Alberta runner gets another half step, gets another three-quarter step, and sometimes that's all it takes to beat, even though that was a really good throw. So it was well done on both parts of the battery.
And also one of the things that we talked about earlier with Dumoulin, you didn't really notice as much of a slide step in some of her earlier deliveries, but that delivery to the plate, just that little bit quicker as well, and we can see how tenths of a second can make a difference. So everything going perfectly for Quebec on that particular play.
Agreed. Like, young girls listening at home, develop a slide step. You don't need it. You don't need to worry about it when you're 12, 13. But as you start to get into those older bantam years, like, you're going to need it at the women's level.
As we do have a comment posted here on Facebook. Oh, just not an actual question, but just a tagging someone in a post there. Okay, question from Will Downs to ask Nicole, how excited are you about Tokyo 2020 and the fact that baseball is returning to the Olympics? I know it was unfortunate that it ever had to leave, but it's going to be back.
That's a very interesting question. Of course, I can't wait to watch, our Canadian men's team go for gold. That's amazing. And worldwide, that'll be awesome. But I'm sorry, I am extremely bitter that it's men's baseball, women's softball, like it always has been, and that there was no real move on anyone's part to push for anything. I'm not saying that women's baseball is at that point yet, but I can't pretend that I'm extremely happy about it being men's baseball and women's softball again, like it always has. And I don't know if we can get into this now, but the Pan Am Games situation is an even bigger disappointment at the moment.
We'll in order to avoid too big of a controversy, we'll hold off on that. And I will say, I for one would love to see men's and women's baseball, men's and women's fast pitch softball, all 4 events going on. The challenge then becomes, looking at how many venues and whatnot. But I'm sure with the amount of dollars that the Olympics have, we could see those 4 events.
I mean, yeah, I'll keep it short, but we did have all 4 at the Toronto 2015 Pan Am Games, and it was extremely logistically easy because the men's, so you're always going to have men's baseball and women's softball, so you're already going to have 2 fields. You're already going to have those 2 venues, and they're going to be sitting empty for half of the games while the other gender's not playing. So in Toronto, the men played on both fields the first week, and the women played on both fields the second week. The problem more comes in when you talk about numbers and money. So each time you add another discipline, it's more money. It's more rooms in the village. So, I mean, that's where they have to start cutting people, and unfortunately we did get cut from the Pan Am Games for this year. But maybe we'll be back.
And the one thing I will say for sure is we will all be cheering on whichever Team Canada's show up at whichever Olympics. And for Tokyo 2020, that means the men's baseball team and the women's softball team. And who knows, it may be different for 2024. Fingers crossed that it will.
Yes, absolutely. Like, just baseball, softball. That ball's roped. That's going to be a hard single. But yeah, whatever teams are there, it's good just to have baseball, softball there. Because obviously that's the first step. If men's baseball is not even in the Olympics, we're not going to be there. So that is definitely a good first step. Yeah,
so the WBSC at least able to get their foot back into the door after the IOC kicked them out completely.
Yes.
A couple of Olympic cycles ago. So as much as we don't want to say it, baby steps.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, both of those disciplines are great to watch, right? And so is men's softball. It's incredible the level that they play at. So it's really good all around.
Move over to first there from the pitcher Moore, and that draws Labrie back to first after the Or that's Latendre, actually, at first there. I missed something somewhere along the way. And there's a hard hit ball out to center field, or right field, rather. Getting over underneath it to make the catch is Fulton, as we notice that Suhai is out in left field now. Smith has come out to be the extra hitter, so Suhai now playing out in left. There's an out, and that'll bring up Lauriane Carrière with Latendre on first. No, sorry, that was Carrière who just flew out. So that brings up Dumoulin. And the pitch. And there's another hard hit ball out to left. And on it quickly is Suhai. And one thing I really like about the way Suhai plays the outfield, no wasted steps. She's very smart with her angles as she gets to those hard hit balls.
And that's kind of rare at this tournament. I've noticed the outfield in a lot of the teams taking extra steps and fielding balls like an infielder when the time calls for it to field it like an outfielder and make a quick throw.
So runners at first and second here, one away, and that'll bring up Boutillier. Boutillier with the RBI double. Her first time up. She also came around to score. 7-3 right now, the scoreline in favor of Team Quebec. A quick update on that other game going on. And they're in the bottom of the third as well. Ontario leading Nova Scotia by a score of 4-1 in that one. There's a good breaking pitch in for a strike. And one of the things we talk about from pitchers, having a good fastball is one thing, but having a breaking pitch that you can control and throw for strikes, that's something else altogether.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few pitchers there I've seen just really, really good velocity, really good fastballs in the zone, and then it's kind of like, oh, wait, what else you got? Like, you can get those bottom tier teams with that, with just the speed, but that you're not going to get Quebec, you're not going to get Ontario, especially not all game, and you're not going to get it at the women's level.
And so we see out there Moore taking a long look back at second. Finally, time gets called with Latendre at second, Dumoulin at first, Boutillier at the plate here in the bottom of the third inning. That one fouled off and into the trees. And want to again thank Will Downs for sending us that tweet with that question. Stirring.
I think that's how we missed the first play of the inning. I was on a rant.
Thanks, Will, for stirring up the bee's nest there. There's a swing and a foul tip. And again, the importance of just being able to get a piece of the ball and keep that at-bat going, force those extra pitches, getting deeper into pitch counts so that the opposing manager has to do more thinking and more maneuvering as the game goes on. Here's the next pitch from Moore. That one's a hard hit ball as well, and it'll land just fair on the left field side. Suhai gets there, throws it in to Rice. So an RBI double for Boutillier. That'll make it 8-3.
Alberta's going to have to answer back for sure here. They're dealing in grease, and Quebec is dealing in solid hits. So it's going to be interesting. Alberta can hit. We saw it in the first inning.
Absolutely they can. And one thing that seems to be happening right now is Moore, whatever it is that Quebec has been able to key off of, they found something in Moore's delivery that they're able to key off of her location and hitting the ball incredibly hard here this inning especially. As we get to Charlotte Elie, she singled and scored in the second inning. And the first pitch to her misses high. And when a pitch misses high like that, one thing that I look at is release point. Is the pitcher just had that ball out of the hand just a little bit too early when they're missing that far out of the zone, up especially.
Yeah, and I think that may have been what happened there. Tries to adjust, over-adjusts there.
Mm-hmm. And that, again, one of those symptoms of youth. You make a mistake one way, you over-adjust, you make the mistake the other way.
Yeah, totally. And she's not doing a bad job here. It's sometimes in this tournament especially, a pitcher that throws hard and flat, like teams can get on it because it's like good BP that's like 70 miles an hour, and sometimes the loopier pitchers are actually harder to get these great hits off of.
There's a good adjustment by Moore, and that one's in for a strike. 2-1 now the count. Runners on second and third and 2 away. Here comes the 2-1 pitch from Moore. Slowly and deliberately. Now she's ready to deliver. There we go. That one fouled off, and the count goes 2-2. Sometimes my timing gets thrown off by a pitcher taking a little extra time there in between pitches.
Yeah, I mean, I guess she doesn't need to now because the runners are on second and third, but it's good to mix up your timing when the runners can have somewhere to go.
One thing we've seen a fair bit of in this tournament, and it's, again, that younger pitchers still learning, and particularly with those, PEI, Newfoundland, Labrador, we saw a lot of balks on this diamond earlier today in a couple of games. And it's hard for us up at this vantage point to see what exactly is being done to call the balk, but that seems to be one of those things that it would seem to be easy to teach. Pause when you're at this point in your release. As there's a walk, that will load the bases and bring us back around to the top of the order for Curie. And we're hearing one of the distinctive things about this tournament. Quebec fans are loud.
Oh, my gosh. They have been since 2003. When I played, they had, at women's, calm down. Totally, I don't know if the parents don't come or what. They're like totally normal. But from 14 to 16, it is just crazy. They always have flags and whatever else. It's just a tradition. And it's fine. It's great. It's great for them. It's great for their team. They were having a barbecue over. They had a whole barbecue tent and everything set up for their team. Like, they didn't go to the restaurant in between or whatever. They just had their whole families and everything.
And the cool thing, too, about there being two Quebec teams here at this tournament, the one team, this one, with the light bodies on the shirt, the darker sleeves and the darker numbers. The other Quebec team with the darker body, the lighter sleeve and the lighter number. I'm just waiting for, if those two teams end up having to run into each other at some point along the way, the nightmare I'm going to have watching that game trying to remember which one's which.
Yeah, I guess I kind of forgot that usually teams only have one set. Usually at women we have, well, I guess that's not true.
Well, because we got the two different Quebec teams, it's
Yeah.
the two different.
But they're the exact mirror of each other.
Yeah. Whereas for Nova Scotia, one team's wearing blue, one team's wearing white. It's a little bit easier to tell those apart. As we play here in the bottom of the third inning, Quebec leading at 8-3. And the lights certainly now starting to actually mean something as they're on here at the Joan Lenahan Field. That pitch misses just a little bit high. And again, we talked about this earlier in the game, but the importance of that patience when you're at bat to not swing at those pitches just, 6 inches, 8 inches above the top of the strike zone.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to stay on top of those. And there's a ground ball up the middle.
And great effort by the Alberta players, but not quite able to knock it down. And Sidor got up a little bit tenderly there after she went down a little awkwardly, trying to knock that ball down. Dumoulin comes in to score. It's now 9-3. Boutillier to third, Elie to second, and Curie to first on the infield single and the RBI. And
Coach,
now
Stephen Inch is out here now talking to Sidor. Hopefully it's just an impact thing, not a twist.
Yeah. And, you talked about the quality of coaching that we see. Stephen Inch, one of those guys with many years of minor league pro experience, and being able to bring that pro experience as a player to the women's game as a coach. The high caliber of coaching that we got, you talked about it earlier, he's one of those prime examples.
Absolutely, and actually just in my, 16 years playing for Team Alberta, we always had really good coaches that had played minor league or college level baseball or had coached midget AAA for years, and And it's really, really speaks to the testament of those guys that they come and they give to this women's program. And it is for other provinces too. I'm just using what I know from Alberta, but the coaching all around is really, really high level.
As we see a strike to Lafave there. Lafave standing in. She's flown out to right field twice. One of those a sac fly RBI.
This is a big moment here. Bases loaded out, like big moment for Quebec to break it open or Alberta to turn it around.
That pitch misses inside, and the count goes to 1-1. 9-3 the scoreline right now, and of course, you look at the fact that right now with 3 on and the batter at the plate, that batter at the plate would make it a 10-run margin. Of course, we're still in the third inning, so there would be time to close that gap before the run rule comes into effect, but that is kind of looming in the back of the picture here.
Yeah, they'd rather not. From Alberta's perspective, they really need to shut this inning down. And Quebec would love to just keep rolling here.
And like I said, we've more so at the C pool and the B pool games, but we've seen, a few innings, 11 runs, 10 runs, 9 runs. We had one of 14 runs earlier today in one of the games. And sometimes it's so hard when that steamroller gets going, even if you're doing everything fundamentally right, just, once that ball is rolling momentum-wise, it's so hard to get it stopped if you're the one who's in the way of it.
Agreed, and here's a walk to bring in a run. The huge inning that I've seen, to these teams' credit, has been largely hitting. There's been, some errors mixed in, but it hasn't been like, in past years or other tournaments you see walk after error after, there's a few mixed in, but it's largely teams getting on hitting streaks.
This is actually my third weekend in a row covering a tournament. Last weekend I was doing the under-16 girls provincials for softball, fast pitch, and then the weekend before that I was doing under-12 provincials for fast pitch. And in softball, you've got that 5-run max in an inning until the last inning, which is open. At this level, or maybe even more so a little bit the younger level, maybe by this level you don't have it, but at the younger level, the U14, the U12, the thought of having a rule like that so that it doesn't get so lopsided at some point.
Yeah. I'd probably be down for that. I mean, yeah, especially at that younger level. And here, the thing that's tricky about it here, though, is like, for example, Nova Scotia 2 and PEI. They went back and forth. Like, Nova Scotia was pushing it, stealing up by 9. But then, PEI turns around and gets 5 runs the next inning. So if you cut them off at 5, is it fair? But at the same time, no one likes those lopsided scores, and I think it might be okay. I mean, I wish I could do it just for the lower pool maybe, but you can't do that.
No, if you're going to play by a set of rules, you got to play by that set of rules. Unfortunately, when you're talking about teams and their pitching staffs, Alberta, they can throw 3, 4, 5 pitchers out, and any one of them could still be able to shut down. But a team like, I hate to pick on them, but PEI, because they've given up a few of those big innings throughout this tournament. Once you get through that number 1 and maybe that number 2 pitcher for PEI, those other pitchers just don't quite have the skill level to be able to shut down an inning, so you end up getting those 14-run innings as we saw one earlier today.
Yeah. Here's another walk and Inch is going out to the mound. But, we see it even at the women's level. So there's a big disparity still between, like, the lowest countries and then the highest ones. The middle has really firmed up, and, like, the middle to top is all very close now, but there's still those really developing countries. And in my opinion, it doesn't really help the game to show those on the live feed. It's like 20-1, and you're at the World Cup. And people who have never seen women play baseball are tuning in and watching this. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't think you could put a run rule like that into the World Cup.
No,
but
no.
The blowout is just then there's such a disparity with those developing provinces or developing countries. It's food for thought.
Maybe you don't cut it at 5. Maybe you stop it at 10.
Yeah.
so
Would
that
10 not be enough?
it's still a huge inning, but you get that, or you stop it at 9 so you don't actually see the double digit on the board in one inning, you know, it's one of those things where there's no absolute right answer and there's no absolute wrong answer.
There isn't. I think those provincials that you did were great. Like the way that they did it probably worked out great. So I'm not sure what would happen here, but it'd be interesting to see because yeah, I mean those just aren't productive. And you have a pitcher struggling who's not a pitcher. They have to bring in someone from the bench or from center field, and it's not really helping them get better. It's not really helping anyone get better. And the hitters are hitting against a pitcher who's barely getting it in there, so they're not really seeing any practical use from that.
And it looks like are we going to see a pitching change here, or is Stephen Inch just having a chat with the umpire about something? And no, it looks like we are going to see a pitching change, as that was pitch number 50. And that brings us to another thing that we were talking about off camera before the broadcast started. Having pitch number 50 occur in the middle of an at-bat, and because it's pitch number 50, we have to see the pitching change in order for Moore to be available on Sunday, because if she throws pitch 51, she's not, but she comes out in the middle of the at-bat, and coming in now is Morgan Knisley for her first pitching appearance in the tournament, and she's got to come in the middle of an at-bat. And we talked about how problematic that is, and how, you know, when you hit that 95 or the max, at this age group it's 95, but in others it's 85 or 105, depending on where it is. But when you hit that max, you're allowed to finish that batter. But when you hit pitch 50, the coach isn't able to come out and say, this is her last batter, so she's available on the next day, even if she has to throw 51, maybe 52 or 53, because those 3 pitches really aren't going to have that huge of an impact over the long term.
I agreed, and I was unfortunately not able to enact any change right away. But,
well, get on it right now.
If you're going to do it for 95, to me, I mean, I'm not a technical genius. I'm not a pitching genius, but if you're on your last batter and you make the call before the at-bat starts, this is her last, and then the umpire goes, okay, and then you finish that batter, you know, to me that improves the flow of the game too, because sometimes they're so close to ending the inning, and then they have to send a whole new pitcher out to warm up, and she throws one pitch, batter gets out, inning over. And yeah, I agree. I guess, can someone on Twitter or Facebook tell us the opposite side of the story, why they don't let that happen?
Yeah. Because, yeah, I mean, it seems like it should be common sense that, you know, that be the way the rule, you know, if it works at 95, how hard would it be for the pitcher or for the coach to say, this is her last batter? Boom, okay, she gets to 50, good. She throws 51. Well, we said it was her last batter. She's still available the day after tomorrow.
Yeah. Is it because if you throw 95, then you're done for the rest of the tournament, so they don't have to worry about the extra pitches? I don't know.
And the other thing is, and I'm sure somebody has done the science behind this of, you know, 50 pitches, 65 pitches, where those numbers actually came from. I'm sure there's some expert in kinesiology who has come up with what those pitch numbers are, but in their studies, have they really looked at pitch number 51 and the impact that it has, pitch number 52 and the impact that it has?
Yeah.
And because it's difficult on the pitcher who has to come out, it's difficult on them psychologically to have to leave in the middle of an at-bat. It's difficult on the pitcher coming in because they have to enter in the middle of an at-bat, and they're, you know, entering into a very unnatural situation. And it's difficult for the batter as they're having to adjust to possibly a pitch coming from the complete other side of the mound,
yes,
from a lefty to a righty or vice versa, in the middle of an at-bat.
So and then plus it's annoying for the defense and it's annoying for the fans because everyone has to wait more.
Yeah. So, if anyone from Baseball Canada who's in the rules department, that one over the fence in center field. A home run.
No, ground rule double, the umpire is saying. We are believing it to be a bounce.
That ball did not bounce. It went over. They're going to talk it over, but I'm sure that ball, when it bounced, it was on the other side of the 259 sign.
The old chain link fence is deceptive.
And that will make the score now 15-3, as that was a grand slam. And I do believe that for Bolduc-So, that's her second home run of the game, a grand slam and a 3-run homer.
Still under discussion, though. Coaches are on the field.
And now we get confirmation it was indeed a home run, a grand slam for Naomi Bolduc-So. 2 home runs, 7 RBI on the game, and 1 out to left field, 1 out to center field. And I think you can mark down Bolduc-So power hitter.
That's literally what I'm doing. I'm going over it so it's darker on the page.
Oh, my goodness. That makes it 15-3, and unfortunately, this game, as difficult as this game is now sitting for Alberta, being now behind by 12, if the margin gets to 15, the game can end after 3.5. If the margin stays where it is here at 12, then it could end after 4.5. And if Quebec wants to get that margin to 15 to end it after 3.5, they're going to need 3 more runs here in this bottom of the third.
Have we seen a 15 run yet?
We have. We had the game between Newfoundland, Labrador, and PEI ended 20-0 after 4 innings.
We have some motioning now from the home plate umpire to the center fielder.
Oh, they need the ball back? Is that what it's?
This is not the major leagues. We have a limited number of baseballs, people. Give us the ball.
I've seen foul balls returned.
I don't know if Bolduc-So gets that after the game, or I'm sorry, but we can't afford it.
Yeah. Well, I remember one tournament that I was doing the PA announcing at up in Slave Lake, Alberta. I'm sure a community you're familiar with.
Home of the Slave Lake Heat.
Oh, yeah. And it was a miserable weekend, as it can be from time to time in Slave Lake. And what we had to do in order to keep enough dry baseballs going is we actually had the barbecue set up right by the fence on the first base side, and a ball would be used for 2-3 pitches. A pitch in the dirt, or it would be hit out to the outfield and get into the grass or whatever. And that ball would be immediately thrown out of play, put on the barbecue, another couple would be taken off, the barbecue running at very low heat, so it wasn't damaging the balls, but enough to dry them off, and you could recycle them back in, because we had that few balls to work with.
I have never heard of that before. That is ingenious, and it is brilliant.
And it worked. Like, that's the cool part. It actually worked.
Get, delicious grill marks on the balls?
No, because they had the heat down so low, and they put a little, like a baking sheet or something right on top of the actual grill.
Of course they had a baking sheet.
Yeah. There's a grounder down to short, throw across in time, and that mercifully brings the inning to an end as Labrie, who made the first out, makes the final out.
It's a great play from Brinley Rice there to just stop the bleeding. And, it wasn't an easy play, so she came across and just got it done.
And that will do it for inning number 3. A grand total of 8 runs come across in that inning on 8 hits. No errors, and that's, we talked about that. No errors in that inning, and nobody left on base. One of the things that, we talked about in some of these big innings, and 8, certainly a big number there, but not because of defensive miscues behind the pitcher, not because of sloppy play, just because of real good hitting from a very talented Quebec team.
Yeah, I mean, we had, 2 walks in that inning. But I've seen just merry-go-rounds of walks before, and we really haven't seen that in this tournament. So, what Quebec's credit, like they are hitting the ball, and it's going to be really tough for Alberta to come back in this situation. All they can do here is just try to scratch and claw their way and get hit by pitches, lay down a drag bunt, use every pitch to their advantage, and try not to waste any at bats because they're going to need every out that they have here.
And good news for Alberta, as the game between Ontario and Nova Scotia now tied at 4, and presuming Quebec holds on to win, which I think is a somewhat safe presumption. I mean, not to take anything away from Alberta, but a 12-run deficit is a big hill to climb. Presuming Quebec holds on to win, if Ontario wins, Alberta goes all the way down into that 7-12 placement games group because of a head-to-head loss to Nova Scotia, and both Nova Scotia and Alberta finished 1 and 2. If Nova Scotia wins, because Alberta beat Ontario earlier today, Alberta gets to go to the quarterfinals, and Ontario would go down into that 7-12 placement game group. So Nova Scotia doing Alberta a big favor coming back in that game. There's a grounder down to third. Good, strong throw across, right on target. And that's one thing we've seen a lot of from players on the left side of the infield for all of these teams, those throws across the diamond on the mark.
Oh, yeah. It's been really noticeable. Strong arms, good throws. I have hardly seen a first baseman have one go over their head, and I've seen the odd one in the dirt, but overall, really, really good throws.
And that throw across the diamond, much like the throw for the catcher down to second, it's a long distance to try and throw with a limited time span to work with.
Yeah, agreed. At this age, for sure, it's they don't have time to double clutch too long over there. They got to get rid of it.
That'll bring up Zelaya Downs. She lined out to third her first time up. Downs, of course, we talked about the home runs that we've seen. She hit the first home run in this park in this tournament earlier today. Nothing hit out of the park yesterday, although the wind was blowing in, and it was blowing hard for much of the day. There's a strike to Downs. And you would think a round baseball would really not be as affected by wind currents as it is, but that wind does play a factor.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, they say it in the major leagues all the time, right? Like, wind's blowing in, like, look at the flags, right? And you wouldn't think, but I guess we're not physics professors.
Yeah. My physics teacher in high school, always had to preface questions with, there's a Alberta bounce as that one gets past the shortstop Carrière, and Downs is on.
Is a bounce, but it's hit hard. So when you hit the ball hard, you are more often rewarded by bad hops on the other team, so you just got to hit it hard, and sometimes things will happen.
And that'll bring up Sue High. Sue High reached on an error her first time up, comes up with 1 on and 1 out. Actually, Chloe Ramsey will come in to pinch hit for Sue High here. So Chloe Ramsey making her first plate appearance of this game. Ramsey, not only her first plate appearance of this game, but her first plate appearance of this tournament, came in as a pinch runner in a previous game and came around to score. And that takes a strike. And we talk about the coaching staffs and how great a job they've been doing teaching and whatnot. The other thing I'm really impressed with, these coaches who are carrying 14, 15, 16 player rosters, yes, it's a national championship, and yes, you're playing to win, but they're also doing a great job of making sure every single one of those 14, 15, 16 players are getting into the games and getting involved. They're not just here on a trip to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, and that's a skill. I mean, I haven't done a ton of coaching, and so I know it's probably harder than it looks. But finding those times to get your players in, because it's important. Like, if you let's say you win your first 3 round robin games handily, and you never need to take anyone out or put anyone in, and then there comes a time someone it gets injured, or you need that extra pinch runner or something, and even though they've practiced, if they've never been on the field until Sunday, it's just a mental thing, and especially at this age. So just getting them in for a couple innings, just okay, we're up by 3, or we're up by 4. It's the let's get her into right field. Let's trust that we can take our starter out and trust our bench and get them in, and that really helps when you go down the line.
And we've seen it, and again, you talk about those provinces that are at that kind of second and third tier. They've done a great job as well getting those players in who, in a game against a team like Alberta, they wouldn't necessarily belong in that game, but playing against another province at that same tier, getting all of those players in, getting them that experience. We saw last year Prince Edward Island came here with a team that had half PEI players, and the other half was players borrowed from Nova Scotia's third-tier teams. And having those 8 or 9 players from PEI come here to this tournament last year, they went home, they talked up the game, and now PEI was able to bring a full squad this year of all island girls. And it really does make a difference.
There's a ball out to left field.
That's going to drop in for a hit. So back-to-back singles for Alberta. And we talked about it. These girls will not roll over and play dead. Yeah, 12 is a big mountain to try and climb, but they are going to scratch and claw and fight right up until the final out. Absolutely.
They flew 5 hours to get here. They might as well. I think we missed a strikeout in between. There was a.
LAS says that was Fulton who got that single, so it was Ramsey who struck out in that pinch hit roll. And there's Weeks taking one off the thigh to load the bases.
That's what I mean, right? Like, she could have gotten out of the way of that, but you're down by 12. You need base runners, and she's fine. Of course, I'm not trying to say you should get hit and get hurt. If it's coming for your neck or something, like, of course, get out of the way.
Now, one of the things we hear, is the batter didn't make enough of an effort to get out of the way, and therefore the hit by pitch doesn't count, especially, those Major League Baseball players who have the Kevlar and the 8-inch thick elbow pad. So as someone who's played the game, you're not an umpire, you haven't, done all that, but where is that line of you got to move to try and get out of the way, but don't move so far that you actually get out of the way?
Yeah. So my experience as I got into the women's level is if it's in the batter's box, it's your prerogative to take that, to get hit with it and get on. That's the pitcher's fault. You just have to move your body, like you just have to turn your back to it. That's all that they require. At that level, it's the pitcher's fault. When I was younger, there seemed to be a lot more of this, no, you didn't move far enough. And I think that's because the pitchers just had a lot less control, and it's just, to keep the game hit-centered and to focus on getting hits, right? And that's fine, but there's just sort of this magical age where the umpires just, I don't know what they're taught, actually, and if there's like an age where it stops, but there's an age where you just, if it's coming in your batter's box, it's not your responsibility to get out of the way. And you just have to turn your back a little bit. That's all it takes. But if you go into it, like into the strike zone or close to the strike zone, then they have the full right to call you back.
Oh, yeah. And again, especially, you look at Major League ball players and the armor that they wear on the upper arm and the elbow and everything else, as Nova Scotia making some noise in their game against Ontario. Meanwhile, we have a pinch hitter over here on at the plate. That's Ava Griner, or I never quite get her name pronounced correctly for some reason. Griner.
I played with someone with that last name, and he pronounced it Griner.
Okay.
But I don't know anymore.
From Stettler down towards the Red Deer area.
Yeah. Actually, shout out. My boyfriend's from Stettler.
There you go. There's a swing and a miss. And Griner or however it's pronounced, and I mean no disrespect, I just can't wrap my mouth around that name for whatever reason. Goes down swinging. So Alberta threatens. They get the bases loaded. but not able to put any across. No runs on 2 hits, no errors, and the bases left, as mentioned, loaded. And after 3.5, Quebec leads it 15-3. So we'll head to the bottom of the 4th. Quebec needing 3 runs in this half inning to end the game. The score 15-3. It'll be Letendre, Carrière, and Dumoulin due up. Although I'm suspecting we may see some pinch hitters at this point for Quebec to get their other players into the game. And as we look around at the Alberta defense, Fulton still out there in center. Right field now being worked by Taylor Breen.
Is that it?
Just trying to take a quick look around. Rice is still at short. Downs is still at first. Grainer, who came in, stayed in the game to play second. So there will be a new left fielder as well. And can't quite see the number for the left fielder there. And of course, she's going to back to her position, not turn and walk there. Here's the joys of broadcasting when you can't tell who's where.
A couple years ago, I would have known everybody just by their face, but the girls that I've played with have all moved up and are past, so I don't know all these girls.
And of course, therein lies the argument for numbers on the fronts and backs of jerseys as well.
Speaking of girls, we had a request to zoom in on a sign that's posted on the outfield. I don't know if we have that ability.
Unfortunately, no. All 3 of our cameras are stationary,
yeah,
and so we don't have the ability to do that. There's a grounder. That just gets over the shortstop as Rice with a great effort on that ball, but Letendre with the leadoff single. And when you're watching a player defensively not able to make a play like that, but putting in that great effort on that play, obviously that's what you're looking for. They're not going to be able to knock that ball every time. You're looking for, are they putting everything they've got into that one?
100% looking for that. Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. You got to try. Like, you never know what you can get on a dive unless you try. And you never know what you're going to be able to knock down. In this case, there's no one on. But if there's runners on, you knock a ball down. She's still safe because it's into your backhand hole or something. But you stop the runner advancing another 90 feet, or 80 feet in this case. These are the little things that we're looking for. Why not dive at this point? Why not, right?
Yeah, exactly. Nicely, that pitch ends up getting past the catcher Stanich, and that will allow for Letendre to get down to second.
I played a couple innings in the outfield in my last year, and it was really hard to switch that mentality of you have to decide now when you're going to dive as an outfielder. It's very important to strategically decide, because if it gets past you, you're the last one. But as an infielder, like, that just is your mentality. Like, if you can't get it standing up and it's within reason, like, just dive, just try. There's nothing to stop you from that.
As we have Nisley delivering the pitch, that one misses inside, and it's going to get away, but not far enough to allow Letendre to advance.
Yeah, the fences are really close to this park, so it's gotta take like a weird bounce if it gets past.
As we take a quick look again at the scoreboard, Nova Scotia has taken the lead on Ontario. So Alberta, fans of the Blue Nosers.
If you're too nervous watching this, you can go switch to the Nova Scotia game. Cheer for
that one misses high and inside. And of course, someone who spent most of my life living in Alberta, now living in Nova Scotia. I was going to be, supposed to be impartial on the broadcast, and I try to keep the commentary impartial, but I'll admit it, I'm cheering for Alberta, and I'm cheering for Nova Scotia. But like we were talking about before the broadcast, I can find ties for myself to pretty much every province in the country. There's a strike at the knees.
Yeah, and it's great because a lot of these girls, this is a cool tournament for them because they all stay at the same, well, almost all the teams stay at the same dorm at the university. So they meet each other, they chat, and they get to know each other a little bit. It's just cool to meet girls from across the country who are playing baseball like you are.
And if you're the broadcaster who's staying on the ground floor of that same building and you got your window open because you're trying to keep it cool and you're hearing them talk all hours of the night outside.
Confirmed. It's been confirmed.
Actually, it was funny. I don't know if it was this Quebec team or the other Quebec team, but they were out. I don't know if they were outside because I had the shade drawn down because I am on the ground floor, but I had the window open to try to keep it a little bit cool. And they were teaching, I think it was the girls from PEI, some phrases in French, and the PEI girls were teaching the Quebec girls some slang in English. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting in my room listening to it, and you know, as someone who has a very, very moderate knowledge of French, kind of laughing at the phrases that they're choosing to teach each other, because, of course, they're 15, 16-year-old girls, so we know what phrases they're teaching each other.
I mean, it's just, yeah, that's funny. It's a cool thing about nationals.
Meanwhile, we had a walk there, so now there's 2 on as Carrière earns the walk. That'll bring up Dumoulin. Actually,
That's a fair
for
ball.
Carrière, it was Auger
Ground
coming
ball.
in. That ball getting down into the corner. And a double for Dumoulin will drive in 1 run. That makes it 16-3. And again, it was not Carrière. It was Raphael Auger who came in as a pinch hitter and earned the walk.
I don't know if our viewers at home saw when the ball went to left field, but the sign in left field says, "Hi, Kira," and it's on a pink sign. So, Kira, if you're watching at home, that one was for you. Hopefully you're from Quebec because that was a good Quebec hit, but I don't think you are.
So Dumoulin with the RBI double there. Makes it 16-3. That'll bring up Boutillier. Boutillier 2 for 2 with a pair of doubles, couple of RBIs, and 2 runs scored. And that pitch comes in tight. And one thing about players getting hit by pitches, especially at this level, we should phrase it with, these are not throwing at batters. If a
No.
pitch ends up hitting a batter, it's an attempt at an inside pitch that just gets a little bit too far inside. We don't see that kind of antic at this game.
No, absolutely not. And nice play over there from Elitidor to catch that foul pop up. But yeah, I mean, we don't throw hard enough for it to matter. Like, if you hate someone or you have a problem with what someone did and you throw 99 miles an hour, then it sends a message. But a 64 mile an hour fastball in the back doesn't, or in the glutes, doesn't really have the same message. And also, they're not like that. The coaches aren't like that. The girls aren't like that. It's just not really part of it here.
No, just sometimes, you know, if a fan of baseball is tuning in and doesn't really have a vested interest and is just watching, they might think, oh, they're throwing at each other. No, they're not throwing at each other.
I've heard it a few, whoa, when the ball gets close to someone, but you can tell it's not on purpose.
Oh, yeah. They're like you're saying, there's a difference between a pitch intended to be on the inside corner or maybe just a bit inside to try and get them to chase that just gets a little bit away versus a purpose pitch, as you know, you hear it get called.
Yeah.
And this far from anything that we've seen at this tournament is far from that. And this coming from a guy who, along with broadcasting baseball, broadcasts a ton of junior hockey. So I've seen
Seen the purpose.
plenty of the purpose stuff. Oh, yeah. The stories I could tell. There's a swing and a miss on a nice pitch there from Knisley.
So this is actually a huge time here because the winning run is on second.
It is, yes. And Knisley, her first pitching appearance in this tournament, coming in what some would look at as a mop-up role, but she is delivering some very good pitches here to these Quebec hitters.
Yeah, agreed. She's keeping her composure well, and you wouldn't think that. What are we in the fourth? Yeah, you wouldn't think, but this is a big moment for her to show that she can just shut it down.
As again, the potential winning run to make it the 15-run margin stands right now at second base. It is 16-3. That one catches the outside corner. And again, Knisley, and just got to check my little notes here. Knisley from St. Albert. Shout out to the Skyhawks. Grad of 91, St. Albert High right here.
Woo.
There we go.
I coached Morgan at a girls' winter camp a few years ago, and she made the drive into Edmonton and was really, really gung-ho to learn and get better. So it's really rewarding to see her at this level.
I lived in St. Albert, making it sound like that drive in from St. Albert is not that. It's not that far.
Yeah, I mean, it is basically touching Edmonton.
That's like us here in Bedford making the drive into Halifax.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that I should look up where Bedford was because I just assumed it. You know, I was flying into Halifax, and then I realized, oh yeah, it's touching it.
For those of you not familiar, Bedford to Halifax is St. Albert to Edmonton, or for Quebec, maybe Laval to Montreal. To put it into perspective there, but you know, the community of Bedford really does have an identity of its own here, as part of what is called the HRM, the Halifax Regional Municipality, but. You know, you've got Sackville, you've got Bedford, you've got Cole Harbour, home of course, Sid and Nathan, those two guys who play that other sport that he talked about. You've got Dartmouth and Halifax and a number of other communities here within the HRM. It's all one regional municipality, but so much identity within each of these communities. There's a grounder. Nice nab there at short. Throw across, and what a pick by Downs. One run does come in, so it's now 17-3, but credit to both the shortstop and the first baseman, Rice and Downs, on either side of that play.
Yeah, that was a good play all around good play.
And another one of those things that we talked about from a Quebec perspective, a productive out.
Very productive out. Now we have, I mean, not necessary, but to have runner on second, but we have the winning run on third.
And there's ground ball to first, and Downs will get the out unassisted. So the score line is 17-3 after 4 complete. We will play the top of the 5th, and in order to force a bottom of the 5th, Alberta will need to score at least 5 runs. So Quebec does have a chance to finish it off here going into the top of the 5th inning. But again, got to give a nod to both Rice and Downs for that play for out number 2.
And that was a pretty hard-hit ground ball, too. It wasn't necessarily an easy backhand.
And that will take us to the top of the 5th. Due up in the top of the 5th for Alberta, it's Sador, Moore, and Rice. Although it looked, Sador, Breen, and Rice. As we again look at that, I've referred to it occasionally as the out-of-town scoreboard, just out of force of habit from when I'm doing hockey games. But it is, 50 feet away over our right shoulders. Nova Scotia continues to lead Alberta there 5-4. They're in the top of the 6th inning there. And again, presuming that Quebec holds on to win this game, if Nova Scotia wins, Nova Scotia and Quebec would get the byes to the semifinals. Alberta and Ontario would finish 3rd and 4th, and Alberta would get 3rd and stay in the quarterfinals by virtue of the head-to-head win over Ontario earlier today, and Ontario would move into the semifinals of the 7-12 bracket, so they could finish no worse than 10th, even if they lose their last 2 games. If Ontario comes back and wins, if Quebec holds on, then Ontario and Quebec would get the byes to the semifinals. Alberta and Nova Scotia would finish tied 3rd and 4th with 1-2 records, and Nova Scotia would get 3rd by virtue of the head-to-head win over Alberta. So Alberta would move into that semifinals of the 7th to 12th place bracket. So while this game is almost determined as to what the outcome is going to be, still very much a lot in the air, particularly for the fate of Alberta in that game over on the other diamond.
Yeah, isn't that a funny thing? You could lose by 14 runs, and your fate is still helped out by over there. But the thing is that means because every round robin game matters. So those wins that they had earlier, yesterday and today, like every game matters in this tournament.
And it's great to see that so close these games in this tournament. As leading off, it is actually Alexis Hogan, standing in for the first at bat here. So it's Hogan followed by Breen. And for Hogan, this is her first at bat of this game. So we can tell you that so far on the tournament, she is 0 for 3.
So you can see here the Alberta coach is doing what we were talking about. So they're getting Hogan into the game, right? They're thinking, why not? Like, we're already losing by this much. They haven't had a huge production from everyone else. Let's get her in there, give her some experience.
And, depending on what happens, Alberta could be playing in a quarterfinal game tomorrow. And if they play in that quarterfinal game tomorrow, their opponent would be the other Quebec team, I think. Let me just double check that as I do have it all. Actually, it would. Their opponent would be the other Quebec team, and you might need a key at-bat from Hogan in that game, and by earning a walk in this one, that might give her that extra little bit of confidence that she needs going into whatever she faces tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. It's not her first time out under the lights, out playing.
As Breen is up for her first at-bat, and Breen swings and misses at the first pitch, and so far on the tournament, Breen 0 for 1 in her one plate appearance.
It's also a point of what you said before. Getting those girls into the game helps grow girls baseball because they go home with a better experience. Even maybe they weren't a starter, but they played, they had fun, they got on the field, they got some experience, and now they can want to come back the next year instead of just thinking, screw it, I'll just, I'm going to switch to softball or go play another summer sport and be done with this. So it's this, we're all here to grow girls baseball, and so that's really a huge part of it.
And the other thing, maybe not necessarily for this year's tournament, but a player like Breen, a player like Hogan, who is only 14 or 15, they could be back at this tournament next year when it's in Summerside, and having had that year of a couple of spot pinch hits, a couple of pinch runs, but that experience will lead them into a leadership role on Team Alberta at next year's 16U event.
Exactly, and this tournament has a wide age spread. Like, you have to be turning that age this year. So some of these girls would be 13, turning 14 before this year is over. Here's a ground ball to first.
And that is an unassisted put out there. Hogan gets down to second.
They're quite young. Like, think of the difference between a 13-year-old girl and someone who turned 16 January 1st of this year. Like, a 16-year-old's probably fully grown, they're full size. A 13-year-old's still a child. So, like, they can't beat themselves up if they're not a starter. I think they have a long ways to go, and they will be there the next years.
And speaking of that, I look at Saskatchewan's roster and how young that roster is, and with even some of those young players were returning players this year, they'll be able to be back at this tournament next year and perhaps the year after. You're going to see some players who could very well have 4 years of experience at this tournament alone. Saskatchewan's going to be a team to beat in the next year or two.
Yeah, I think that they're definitely building towards something.
As Rice takes a first pitch strike. And shout out to the people who used to live in Uranium City, Saskatchewan, one of my other former hometowns. Like I said, I've lived just about everywhere in this country.
Is that way up north?
Oh, yeah. Uranium City doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, isn't there not even a road to it? It was like a winter.
There never was, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. To get into Uranium City, you had to fly in during the summer, or over the winter you drove over Lake Athabasca.
Yeah.
And there's one right in the middle of the back. That'll put Rice onto first base. Actually, I apologize. It was another pinch hitter, Helena Appleyard, pinch hitting for Rice.
And I believe Appleyard is here mostly as a pitcher, so for her to be able to get an at-bat is good experience, too. Because if you have to go in and hit, you don't want it to be your first time if it's, let's say they make it to the semis or you're somewhere. It's good for her to get these at-bats.
And Appleyard, yeah, as you mentioned, one of the big pitchers for this team, Alberta. I remember her pitching performances in last year's tournament. Appleyard was an absolute fantastic pitcher, and 3 2/3 innings in her start that she had yesterday ended up getting tagged with the loss in that game against Nova Scotia. But over those 3 2/3 innings, gave up just 2 runs. But when your team loses and you only score 1 run in run support, and you give up 2, that unfortunately some days is enough. Just ask Blue Jay pitchers about run support.
Yeah, and I mean, it's too bad for this tournament because obviously the top goal is to win this tournament as a team. But from a scouting perspective, just we're focusing on your performance, so don't get down if you have a good outing and you don't win the game. We've still noticed. Here's a well-struck ball.
There's a ball to deep left center, and the 2 outfielders collide, and both slow to get up.
The shortstop is out there collecting the ball.
And Stanich will stop at third. But more importantly than anything else right now, the 2 outfielders for Quebec, both back to their feet, but both were very slow to get back up.
So slow that the infielder got out there to get the ball in, but they are up now. They collided. The ball was in someone's glove and out before it could be recorded as an out.
And this marks back-to-back games that we've seen collisions of Quebec outfielders, and as the game on the other field just prior to our 6 o'clock starts saw Quebec 2 have a couple of players collide on a fly ball. 2 runs came in on that play, so it's now 17-5. Alberta still needs 2 runs more to force Quebec to bat in the bottom of the 5th. Or actually, they need 3 runs more as they need to get the margin to less than 10. And it looks like all of the Quebec outfielders will stay in the game.
Trainer is sort of yelling out to them, and she's not coming out, so it looks like they'll be okay.
And we are going to see a pitching change for Quebec, as taking over on the mound is Ella de Bedard. And I remember Day Bedard from last year's tournament as well. She was pitching for Quebec 2 in that tournament last year as a young player for Team Quebec 1 this year. Day Bedard, oh no, she is 16. Oh no, I'm looking at the wrong, where am I? She's not. Oh, there she is. Yeah, just 14 years old is Day Bedard. Pitched in this tournament for Quebec 2 as a 13-year-old last year. And if memory serves, Quebec 2 finished in 5th. And she ended up getting the victory in that 5th place game. Of course, this, from a year ago, so I'm trying to go from memory. But Day Bedard, as a 14-year-old, this is a pitcher that, Nicole, you're going to really like. I don't know if you've had a chance to see her yet, but
I haven't seen her throw. She looks like the hardest throwing 14-year-old that is at this tournament.
Yeah, and a very, not necessarily a traditional kind of pitching delivery, a very big leg kick, and a big bend in the body as she goes through that delivery. But if you get the results, you're not going to argue with the mechanics looking a little bit unorthodox.
Yeah, I mean, she's a pretty good arm action, and like we said, she is young, so maybe she'll be able to develop that slide step in the next couple of years too. So she has both. As
Stanich stands at third base, and Courtley is at the bat. And that pitch just misses, not by a whole big bunch there. Again, other look at what's going on. They're into the bottom of the 6th there. Nova Scotia still leading. There's a strike. As the count to Courtley now 1-2. Thank you, Mr. Umpire, for confirming that for us. Bedard gets herself set and delivers. That one misses a little bit high. The one thing I notice about Bedard as well is there's not a whole lot of action in that elbow. It's really a whole arm delivery. That's something you really want to see from these young pitchers so that they're not overtaxing that elbow at a young age.
Yeah.
There's a swing and a miss, strike 3 for the second out of the inning. That brings Alberta down to its last chance, and it'll be Lidia Lafave.
She's been hitting the ball really well today, so she's gotten unlucky, hit it right to people a couple times, but if she could just keep that same approach, might be able to extend this inning. Here's an example of the pitch count coming in, so, Alberta may not win this game, but if they can push Bedard to get her pitch count up higher than they would like it, then that changes their strategy for using her, on Sunday.
Absolutely, and for Bedard, just double-checking here, this is, I believe, her second pitching appearance. She threw 1 inning in one of the games yesterday, as Quebec played 2 of their round-robin games yesterday, just the 1 game today. So, depending on how many pitches she threw in that 1 inning, will determine in part. And there's another hard-hit ball by Downs. That will get all the way through to the fence in left center. 1 run will score. Downs in with the stand-up double. It's 17-6. And Alberta making Quebec work for it here in the top of the 5th inning.
That was a really, really well-hit ball. Downs has come a long way since I last saw her, coached her at a winter camp years ago. She's really putting good swings on the ball today.
And not only that, her line out in the second inning went to the third baseman. That one was out to left center. She hit a home run over the fence in right field earlier today. She's hitting the ball with power and hitting it with power to every part of the park.
Yeah, and that's huge. I mean, again, sorry to go back to this, but years ago, people would pull the ball hard. They couldn't do anything the other way, and they couldn't stay up the middle. And here we have players now going to all fields. That is important. You go to the World Cup, let's say, in years with Downs, and she always hits to the same field. They have that all tracked. They move their defense, and suddenly they're just sitting there waiting for it. But they can't. If you spray across all fields, that's really hard to defend against, even at the national team level.
There's only 9 defenders able to be out there. You can't cover every inch of grass.
Yeah.
As we're hearing some noise from the other diamond. There's a swing and a miss, strike 3, and that will do it for this ball game. Team Quebec gets the victory 17-6 in 4.5 innings. So now Alberta has to wait and become Blue Nose fans, cheering for Nova Scotia, hoping that Nova Scotia can help out. We'll stick around for the presentation of the players of the game as well as the handshakes. Nicole, I want to thank you again for joining me on this broadcast. It's been so much fun to have someone to talk baseball with rather than just one person talking about the game by themselves for, 2 hours. But so thank you much. And again, welcome to Bedford and thanks for being here and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much. This was amazing. It was really fun. And, thank you to the community of Bedford and the tournament organizers. Everyone is working really hard, and this tournament has been running really, really well. And
now you can add professional broadcaster to your resume as well.
That's right. And I got the picture of us in the booth beforehand. I got that. Yeah, no, this was a really, really fun time. And I should probably head out now and check out some more of that other game. Continue on looking at the talent.
All right. So, Nicole, again, thank you so much. And, enjoy the rest of your weekend. That was our wonderful pro scout, member of the Team Canada crew joining us here, Nicole Lachinsky, joining us for that. And, again, Nicole, thanks so much. We'll get the presentation of the players of the game now, a few different players that you could talk about. And for Alberta, not a big surprise, it's Lidia Downs who gets it. We talked about her hitting the ball to all fields, making a few nice defensive plays over at first base as well. And for Quebec, a few players you could talk about. So many good offensive performances for that team. And it is Naima Bolduk-So, 2 home runs, a grand slam, and a 3-run homer. Hard to argue against that as your choice for the player of the game. So there you have it, Bolduk-So and Downs as your 2 players of the game. The final score once again, Team Quebec 1 defeats Alberta 17-6. Quebec 1 advances directly to the semifinals. Alberta now has to wait and find out whether they go to the quarterfinals or whether they drop down into the placement bracket. Till morning, and we can tell you this much for sure, our game tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. on this field will be Nova Scotia 2 against British Columbia in one of the quarterfinal games. Nova Scotia 2 versus BC here on Joan Lenahan Field at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Until then, again, on behalf of Nicole Luczynski, this is Michael Petter saying, may your pitches hit the corners, may your liners hit the gaps. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with you tomorrow morning.